What up, everybody, and welcome to Baz on Blades. My name is Baz, and I talk about blades. Today's feature blade, another product from Real Steel Knives. What we've got here is the T101 Thor model. This is a special edition model. The special edition model, let's just go ahead and knock that out of the way. What you're getting in this is a radially machined and textured G10 handle in blue, black layered G10. As you can see here, it is radially machined, and the regular Thor model has flat G10 scales that are radiused on the edge for comfort. So what you get in this is you're getting this texture that is showing this beautiful layering in the blue and black G10 along with the radial shaping. Real Steel, very quickly, is a Chinese produced product, and they are doing they are part of the new wave of budget friendly but finely made and well appointed knives that we are seeing come out of China. Brands like Real Steel and Rake Knives and Best Tech Knives. You're getting features and build quality that just 5 or 10 years ago we did not see at all at this price point in the knife world. And what you're looking at right here is $59.60, and I got that price from knifecenter.com, and they do currently have this in stock. Let's set this down right now. We will look very quickly at the Real Steel packaging. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. It is a nice structured box. Inside of that box, you're going to find a microfiber cloth and the various paperwork that comes with Real Steel products. I like their packaging. It is attractive. And it is a nice structured box. It's just not a fold-up cardboard box. And really, this is nicer packaging than you get with a lot of $200 knives. In fact, it's nicer packaging than you'll get with a lot of custom knives that cost $500 or $600. I have taken delivery of $600 custom knives that came with no packaging or in an actual Ziploc sandwich baggie. Okay, so that's not too bad. Now, let's go ahead and knock some specs out on this knife. This is a full-size knife. What you're looking at is a 3 3/4 inch blade length, and that's about 9.5 centimeters. The blade stock thickness is 135 thousandths of an inch, or 3.4 millimeters. Your blade width, 1.18 inches, or 30 millimeters. Handle length, 4 3/4 of an inch, or 12 centimeters. Your handle thickness, 669 thousandths of an inch, so 2/10 over a half of an inch almost, or 17 millimeters. Your handle width at the pivot, 1.2 inches, or 30.5 millimeters. The closed width, 1.4 inches, or 36 millimeters. Your overall length, you're looking about 8 3/8 of an inch, or 21.5 centimeters. Stop pin diameter, 154 thousandths of an inch, or 3.9 millimeters. Behind the edge, I got 27 thousandths of an inch, or 0.69 millimeters. Your handle to blade ratio, a very respectable 0.78, and the weight, 5.04 ounces, or 143 grams. And that said, when I talk about blade to handle ratio, what I'm doing is basically you take your blade length and you divide it by your handle length, and that gives you the percentage of balance between the two. And in this case, that 0.78 blade to handle ratio means that that blade is 78% of the length of the handle. Anything that is over 0.7 or 70% is pretty doggone good, guys, in a folding knife. I've reviewed 2 Real Steel folders today. I'm on my second review for today, and they have both had very good handle to blade ratios, so I wanted to take a minute to comment on that. Now, as far as materials, we'll start here in the blade. The blade steel is Sandvik 14C28N. That is a Sandvik steel. It's a very fine-grained, modern stainless steel. It was developed for knife blades. It is a medium high carbon, high chromium, and nitrogen alloyed stainless. Your carbon content is 0.62. Your chromium content is 14, and your nitrogen content is 0.11. And that nitrogen enhances hardness, and it's very good alloy in addition to steels that have moderate amounts of carbon, because carbon is basically your core ingredient in hardening, and it is what converts iron to steel. When you have a 0.62 carbon content, adding just a little bit of nitrogen in there helps enhance the hardness beyond what the regular limit would be with that amount of carbon. It also aids in corrosion resistance, as it keeps some of the chromium from being grabbed up by free roaming carbon, so it leaves more free roaming chromium in the steel mixture, and it does aid in corrosion resistance. 14C28, you'll typically see it rock weld around the 59 range. The factory or manufacturer's prime range for it is 58 to 62. And what you get in this steel is good edge retention or wear resistance, good toughness, and good corrosion resistance. 14C28 is considered by many, and me included, myself included, to be on the top tier of what we consider to be budget quality, budget stainless steels. And we're talking steels like your 440 series, your 8CR13 and 14, your AUS 8. 14C is considered really to be at the top of that range of steels, and it is a well-respected steel and very much in line with the $59 price point of this knife. So not too awful bad there. Now we'll go into the handle here. What we've got is some very attractive blue-black layered G10, and you can see this is as it's radially machined and then textured here. It cuts through the layers of blue black, and so you get that exposed. It's a very, very attractive. It does give you a lot of visual pop with all of the benefits of G10, which is a fairly lightweight and very tough material, and I actually like that very much. And we got some problems here with the light. I think that's from reflection off of the blade, so I'm going to cover that up. This thing does have substantial stainless liners. They are weight relieved. If you can see down in there, I don't know if it's going to be too dark or not. And I did have a flashlight over here, but I've set it down somewhere. But those liners are weight relieved, and that does cut the weight down to a manageable 5 ounces. It is still a substantial filling knife, but it is not a super chunky heavyweight beast. You've got stainless small hardware in your screws, Torx screws, and single adjustment Torx pivot. You do have a stamped stainless pocket clip, a bent pocket clip that is polished. Those liners are polished as well. And then you have a blue G10 backspacer with some sort of gear tooth sort of milling pattern on it for some jimping at the butt end. In addition, I do want to come back up here and take a look at these thumb studs and look at those. They are fairly substantial, guys, and they are very good designs. And they remind me of another knife. They're not exactly the same, but they remind me of the thumb studs on the Almar Sayre 2000 knife, which is a very fine knife. You're talking over $200 cost. But these thumb studs, where they're thin at the base and have a bigger diameter at the top, to use them, they're a joy to use as far as opening this knife with the thumb studs. And for a flipper design knife with thumb studs, this is one of the very few that is equally as satisfying to open with those thumb studs as it is the flipper. All right, so let's go into fit and finish here, and we'll go back to the blade. What we've got here is a sharpy, pointy, pokey drop point, aggressive looking drop point with a long swedge. The swedge is 2/3 the length of the knife. You've got a flat grind that is a saber grind, and it is 3/4 the height of the blade width, so it does give you a fairly thin, not a super slicey edge. I would say that it is a little more tougher edge at 27 thousandths of an inch behind the edge thickness. The grinds are even on it. You do have a very good sharpening choil here. You've got a length of wide and deep jimping on the back of the blade here that is very effective because not only do you have that jimping, but you've got a moderate thumb ramp there also. And I'm going to press on this jimping a little bit, and then you can take a look at my thumb right here, and you can see where the flesh from the pad of my thumb presses down in that jimping. Very effective. This blade design is also very effective. It does have a slight recurve, and that is a purposeful recurve. It is not a recurve because the blade's hard to sharpen without a sharpening choil, because it does have an effective sharpening choil. It is a purposeful recurve, and what that recurve gives you is an area of the blade right here that focuses the cutting energy into a specific spot, and it's very efficient in cutting in that area. Very well done on this. Everything is even, guys. The finish is good. As you've already seen, this satin finish is giving me a lot of problems with my camera. You also see that this knife has been used. This is another knife from viewer Brian. He has sent me in a box full of knives to review, and thank you, Brian. But Brian uses his knives, guys. We've seen that before. He's not shy about using his knives regardless of how much they cost. So a very efficient, pointy sort of drop point blade profile there. Now, fit and finish in the handle. Guys, with most real steels that I've handled, I'm looking at all sides of this right here. You're not seeing any gaps. You're not seeing anything that's uneven. The scales are finished evenly with the liner. The liner is finished well and polished. The machining on the scales is, I can't find any fault in it. It's attractive. It's well done. It's even side to side. Not only do you have this pattern that's milled in, but they have come back and relieved the edge around the radius. And that may not seem important until you take this into account. I at one time owned a frame lock flipper that was a high-end frame lock flipper, and it had machined G10 on one side and a titanium frame lock on the other side. A very popular knife from a very popular brand. This knife was approaching $300 in cost, and it had sharp edges all the way around the perimeter of the G10 handle scale that I had to take and dress myself before it was comfortable for extended use. And that was a nearly $300 knife. This is a nearly $60 knife, and it is extremely comfortable the way that it has been machined in hand. The G10 backspacer, also machined very well. You can see there's no gaps between the liners and backspacer, and again between the liners and the handle scales. You've got this stamped stainless steel pocket clip with a mirror finish on it. It's a 2-screw mount. It's very stable, guys. It is also right-hand carry only, and it is tip-up carry only. So you only have that single carry option. But as far as fit and finish, guys, everything is good on this knife. Now, let's go to action. Real Steel is very well known for giving you great action at a lower cost. Again, this is one of these up-and-coming Chinese brands. It is doing knives that 10 years ago, they just weren't possible. They didn't exist. This level of refinement and fit, finish, and action did not exist at this price point 10 years ago. And now, it's becoming so commonplace across multiple brands that we expect it at this price point. If you get a $50 knife and it doesn't perform this well, you're liable to send that knife back. It's expected now. This knife is on a bearing pivot. It is very, very smooth. The opening action, it rockets out. It does not have the firmest detent that I've ever felt, but it does not have a weak detent either. I would say it's a medium to medium hard detent, along with the excellent geometry between the flipper tab, the pivot point, and the detent point, that triangle that dictates how your performance is. It's very well designed, a very well designed flipper tab, guys. You can see that there's no jimping on it, but it is dished in the front to catch your finger, and it is very well done. It's nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible to fail the flipping action on this. And again, to go back to the thumb studs, yeah, that's fantastic, guys. Most of the time that you see thumb studs on a flipper type knife, they are a secondary thought. Maybe they're there for a blade stop, which they are not in this case. Maybe they're there because, whatever reason, but they typically are not this effective on a flipper knife. This knife is fantastic to open either way. The lockup is solid, guys. There is no play side to side. And then this knife features the Real Steel secondary safety on the lock. It is much like the locks safety that is on Columbia River knives, and it is basically an interference safety. It prevents the liner lock from being disengaged. It just sticks a tab in there that interferes with that. And while it does not turn your knife into a fixed blade, it will keep you from accidentally disengaging that liner lock. And I'm pushing on that liner lock. Look at my thumb. I'm pushing on it. I cannot unlock that knife until I undo that safety. The safety is knurled, and we'll take a close look at it. It is barely proud. Only the depth of the knurling is proud of the liner and the handle scale. So it is not sticking up and obtrusive and uncomfortable to use, but at the same time, it's pretty easy to engage and disengage, guys. And this is the place where your thumb is going to fall anyway. You instinctually, when you grab this knife, your thumb is going to fall right towards that, and you're going to flip it on. And then when you go to close it, it's easy to, close. And there you go, guys. So whether you like those types of secondary safeties or not, that one is pretty unobtrusive, guys. All right, so as far as action goes, pretty doggone good. The only ding that I'll give it is It is a slightly off center, and by that I mean it is basically off center the thickness of the tip. It is nowhere near that side of the liner. It is not rubbing. No issues there. It is just not absolutely perfect. It's very good. So, no issues there, guys. Now, on to the ergos and utility. Again, I pretty much covered the utility use of this blade. It's nice and pokey, sharpy, pointy for piercing. You do get plenty of belly right here for regular cutting, and then you do have this recurve section for a focused cutting area. It is not the thinnest behind the edge at 27 thousandths of an inch, but that is still plenty thin enough to be a decent slicer, but thick enough to lend some strength behind that edge for heavy use. The tip is fairly thin, guys, but it's not dainty or delicate. It's a pretty doggone utilitarian blade design, and while I'm personally not a fan of recurves, I do appreciate the mechanical advantage they do give you for a focused area of cutting, and I would say that this is a very utilitarian blade. The thumb studs are back far enough to where they're not really in the way of the base of the cutting area here of the edge, nor are they in the way of the focus area of the recurve. And then you've got this pretty good deep jimping right here that I showed you earlier in the video. So ergonomically, and as far as a cutting tool, the blade is very suited for cutting and piercing. Okay, ergos in the handle. Fantastic, guys. I don't know about the regular version of this with the flat handle scales. I've not handled one. I would like to. What that version reminds me of is a Hinderer XM model knife, in that the way the scales are machined and treated. So it'll probably give you that type of feel as far as flat slab type scales with edge radiusing, where this one is a totally radiused scale. I believe it is thicker than the normal version. I would say the normal version is probably 1/10 of an inch thinner, and so this one is a little more hand feeling. This texturing or machining, guys, you can see that while it does give you plenty of depth, you don't see anything sharp about it. It's very, very comfortable. As far as this type of machining for texture on knives, this is one of the best jobs that I have seen recently. You've got a nice ergonomic handle shape. You've got a dished out area here that leads up into this slight thumb ramp. You've got drop at the butt end that fits the curvature of your hand because your hand is not flat. You've got a decent forward choil right here. A very, very shallow secondary choil. And then sort of not really choiled, but recessed third area right here. It's in a forward grip. It's absolutely comfortable in my medium-sized hands. In a reverse grip, again, absolutely comfortable. You've got a nice area at the butt end to cap it with your thumb. As far as a draw grip, this flipper tab is not huge, so it's fairly comfortable to use a draw grip, and because there's not a forward blade oriented choil, you are fairly close to the leading edge of the blade here in a draw cut maneuver. As far as a pinch cut, this handle thickness, it's a little unwieldy in a pinch cut, but not too awful bad. It's just not flat or dished there. So I'm going to say ergonomically the handle is a win. And one more thing, for a pocket clip type that the tip just tips up and there's no flat, it is comfortable in the hand. Yes, I can feel that tip, but with this mirror polish and it's not too awful high, it's not too bad. The clip does give plenty of area under the clip for thicker pocket materials. It is not deep carry, and I would have liked to have seen it back another 1/8 of an inch, but it is what it is, and it does give you plenty of room here to grab a hold of the knife to extract it from your pocket. All right, guys, so what do I think about the Real Steel Thor T101 Special Edition? At $59.60, I think you're getting a heck of a lot of knife here. 14C28 Sandvik for your blade steel is a good quality. It's in the higher end of the entry level, quote unquote, budget stainless steels. It performs very well. It's easy to resharpen. It does take a very wicked edge and holds that edge decently, and then will hold a working edge for a good amount of time. It's easy to strop back to sharpness between sharpening. All right, the handle design is fantastic. It is hand feeling enough to be comfortable for heavy use. Remember, it is almost 7/10 of an inch thick. So those of you that are sensitive to handle thickness as far as carrying in your pocket, or just have smaller hands, you may want to take that into account and maybe look at the standard version of this knife with the flat slab scales. All right, guys, I'm going to recommend this one. I think it's a great deal for what it is. It's comfortable to use, good blade shape, great action with the bearing pivot. I don't feel bad at all about recommending this one at the price point that it's at. So, as always, I thank you very much for taking the time to view one of my videos. God bless all of you, and we will talk to you again.